Hello, and welcome to another project presentation webinar hosted by GoLean6Sigma.com. Project presentation webinars are where we share stories about successful Lean Six Sigma projects, because this is where the rubber meets the road. I'm Tracy O'Rourke, Managing Partner for GoLean6Sigma.com, and today we are highlighting Kara Cuzzetto from King County. And her project presentation is titled Streamlining the Architectural, Engineering, and Professional Procurement Process at King County. Well, that is a mouthful. So, Kara, tell us a little bit about you.
So I'm Kara Cuzzetto. I'm a lean specialist here at King County. I've been with the county for 2 years now. Previously to that, I worked for a local hospital and received certification in lean. So I've been a practitioner of lean for about 15 or 16 years so far. So
awesome. So you went from healthcare to government. What was that like?
It was actually an awesome experience. In one way they're very similar because they're very regulated, right? In another way, we know the difference between private and public sector. Things tend to move a little quicker in the public or the private sector than they do in the public sector.
Of course.
But
yes, that's true. So you're Speedy Gonzalez now.
Sure.
So, Kara, tell us an interesting personal fact about you. Our listeners are always wanting to know a little bit about our presenters.
So I'm born and raised in the Seattle-Tacoma area and have lived here pretty much all my life. And I am an avid Seattle Seahawks fan. So I had season tickets since 1976, went to the first Seahawks game in the Kingdome. And my husband and I and our 3 children have season tickets to this day. And that's what we do as a family and enjoy it very much.
Very nice. And so that means everyone is a Seahawks fan in your family.
Yes.
What would happen if they decided to become, like, say, a Chargers fan?
Oh, yeah, that wouldn't be good. They would have to find another roof.
Home.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing.
Sure.
So go ahead and tell us a little bit about your project. I'm really excited to hear about it.
Yeah, so this was a project that we started in 2014 or early 2015, and it's a partnership between Wastewater Division and the Procure to Pay folks here. So we're looking at architecture and engineering contracts that, are pretty lengthy in the time it takes to process those contracts. There's a lot of information that's involved.
Yes.
So this was a partnership where Wastewater reached out to us. They're in the process of working on 6 large capital streamlining projects, and so they wondered if we would partner with them in this process, and we said, sure, let's go at it. Let's have some fun.
That's great.
Yeah.
So for the layman, how would you explain this process to someone that doesn't necessarily understand wastewater and procurements? How would you typify that?
So wastewater identifies a need for either a building or a repair in a building or something to that nature, and needs an architecture or engineering contract in place. So they express that need to the contract specialists in the procurement department, and provide us with information that starts that process off so that we're able to advertise the need to the population so that they then can come and bid on providing that service for the county.
Awesome. Wonderful. Thank you. That's a great explanation.
So, in any Lean Six Sigma project, we always start with the define phase, right? And so, as part of that, we really wanted to understand what the problem was that we were trying to solve. And what we were hearing from our customers from wastewater was that, it takes a really long time for these contracts to go through this process. And in fact, in 2010, it was upwards of 300 days
wow.
to do one of these contracts. And so,
a year, almost a year.
Almost a year, yes. Which, we know that's not right. So, so we wanted to provide better service for our customers, and what we wanted to do was really understand, okay, what's our start point and what's our end point, right? So it's really important to understand your scope first. So we wanted to start from the time that the agency is reaching out to the contract specialist and requesting advice on a contract to the time that we have decided which contractor we're going with and have submitted that notice of selection. So large value stream, large process.
Good.
Yeah. So what you always start out with, this is the approach that we're going to take, right? In the define phase, we want to, in our contracting or in our chartering process, we want to identify the approaches that we're going to take and the things that we're going to do in order to really understand the process. And that's what we try to do in the define phases. We really slow down. We are methodical in going out and watching the processes, getting on the Gemba, doing process mapping, interviewing customers. So we're really grasping the situation. We want to understand what's going on before we even try to even talk about problem solving, right? You really want to understand what you're trying to solve.
So this was outlining the approaches and the activities that the team is going to do to try to get their arms around the current state.
Yes.
Okay.
And one of the first activities we did was this process map here. So this is a classic kind of swim lane process map where on the vertical you have the different color stickies that represent the different operators within the process, and then on the linear you have the process going across on a timeline. So you can imagine, this represents, 171 days worth of people's time.
Yes.
Right? And so very large project, right? And the thing that we noticed right off the bat was that we had to break it into the phases. And in any contracting process, there's kind of natural phases of that where you're planning, right? And then you're advertising it to the community, and then you're evaluating those contributors, and then you're negotiating with the person that you chose to move forward in that contract, and then you implement the contract. So kind of natural phases of that, but we didn't, I'll say the contract specialist didn't necessarily understand the scope of that or the breadth of that until we did this process mapping exercise.
Right.
And then everybody was like, oh my gosh.
Right. So I can imagine everybody has their own little piece of the process, and this is probably one of the first times that they've seen the entire process on the wall.
Yes, and actually in some cases, even first time they're having conversations about the process with each other.
Yeah, so never even maybe at sometimes had interaction. Wow, okay. Mm-hmm. That must have been very interesting for people.
I think it was really enlightening, and the other thing that you can see on this map is the bright pink stickies are our areas of opportunity. And so we had them scattered throughout this, and the thing that we getting this on a piece of paper, we realized that the evaluation phase, which is stuck right in the middle of the process, is where we wanted to start, which is kind of weird. But what we quickly found out was that's going to inform us of our upstream processes and our downstream processes from that, and the information that we're gathering for that evaluation phase, we have the ability to make sure via external setup that we have it all throughout the process so that our process doesn't stop. Because oftentimes we're stopping and trying to go get information that we don't have.
Right. Okay, good.
So, of course, the SIPOC is a great tool that we use to understand the problem that we're trying to solve. And the thing that I really, really like about this document is the fact that it talks about customer requirements, right? It is so important to understand the voice of the customer before you start any type of improvement. And so this document, this tool really drives you to really think about, what do my customers want? And it forces you to ask that question. Right. Sometimes we make assumptions of what our customers need and want, but this process really got us out of our office on the shop floor and asking those questions and understanding what we needed to do.
Yeah. What I love about what you're talking about is really the ultimate, one of the first principles of Lean, which is define value, right? So you're saying here's a map, here's a process, and we're starting with defining value for the customer. And when we define value and get real clear on what customers want, that can help us identify waste in the process, right?
Absolutely. And also, it defines our customer for us, right? Because oftentimes we want to improve processes for ourselves and not for our customers. And ultimately, they're receiving our product, so we really should create our processes in how we can delight them. So
yes.
That's why I really like this tool.
Good.
I think it really drives us to that. So in that light, we did a lot of gathering the voice of the customer through this process. We did what we coined listening tours with the agencies. We went out and listened to what they have to say. We also did listening tours with consultants, We listen to each other. The project managers and the contract specialists are listening to each other's pain points, and we walk the process.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody who's in the process walked the process, so we all understood what was happening up and downstream.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing was the fact we got in the room and we both, each group hated the same thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we each had the same pain points. And so I think that was the first aha that the larger team had, was that, you know what? This process sucks for everybody.
Yeah, the process sucks, and I think probably I've seen that happen before, where people get in the same room and go, so the thing that causes me the pain is the same thing that is causing pain for you, and it almost creates a unifying element, right?
Absolutely.
It brings the team together. It makes people realize that everyone's kind of a victim of the process, and I think that is, we've seen that happen in Process Walks, you and I, Kara, and it creates a lot of unification around the team as opposed to blaming, right?
Absolutely. And that, that's an important piece about listening tours, right? You're there to listen. You're not there to defend or explain or, try to smoke and mirrors it.
Talk to people about what they should be doing different.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is really, you're there to listen and to understand, what their pain points are and what their frustrations are in the process. So we did quite a bit of that, and it's difficult at first. You have to prep the people. Now, you know what? You're going to go into this room and you're going to hear things that you may not want, but it's not our time to defend. It's just our time to listen, right? And then we have information to take back and to improve things with.
Mm-hmm. Very nice.
So, of course, then we move into the analyze phase, right, where we're understanding the information that we've gathered to this point, right? And so we really want to figure out, where are the pain points, where are our opportunities, we're taking the measures that we did got in the measure phase, and to better understand, what's our target and what's our actual, and where is that gap, and how do we reduce that gap. So, we really did a lot of analyzing, and especially as we're breaking them up into phases, we're analyzing each phase. So we're understanding a lot as we're going along. Mm-hmm. And the first thing that we understood was the wastewater folks wanted to get this one document submitted, which the request for advice, because the perception was that they were getting in line, and that gave them a place, so that when they were ready, they already had their place in line, and that's just simply not the case, right? They're assigned by operator, and so just even understanding that, we would get RFAs that would just sit for months with no work, and because they were thinking they were in line.
I see.
And so we've done a lot of work around trying to
busted that assumption.
Yeah, there is no line.
Yeah.
When you have your documents ready for us to go, that's when the clock starts ticking.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
And there was really no transparency to the process. Nobody knew kind of where the contract was in any phase, whose court it was sitting in, who was waiting for what information, what documents are we waiting for. There was no transparency, and so that was one of the things that we really tried to do in this process of improvement, was to create transparency as to where it was, wherever in the process we could see that very transparently, and who was waiting for what.
Mm-hmm.
And then the process takes too long, and they're each pointing their fingers at each other. You're taking too long. No, you're taking too long. We're all taking too long. It's about the process, right? The process is just broken.
Yeah.
And so we really need to fix that.
Yeah.
And that's, so we realized that really early on.
Now, you had mentioned at the very beginning of this that it was about 300 days initially, and then on your charter it said it was 170 days. So are you saying that there was some improvement efforts made before this project that took out like 200-something days?
Yes, so they did
or maybe not 200 days. My math is bad. 100-something days.
130 days, yeah. Yes, so there was a consultant that came in and did some procurement streamlining with the team, and again, they were sitting at 300 days, and we know kind of early on in the lean, the target is we cut it in half, right? So of course the target's 150 days, but there's no strategy for us to how we get there, right? And so we had this target, but there wasn't any mechanism to identify areas for improvement. So we had this target that they never could meet.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that could be very discouraging.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
So in our improvement on the planning phase, we did a huge amount of work around the scope of work, because oftentimes what was happening, we were just receiving, the last scope of work that they saved on their desktop that would then they manipulated to work for this project. So we created a standard template for our scope of work that has, it's almost got a menu feel to it. So I just pick the things out of it that I need to represent my scope of work, and I drop it into my document, created guidelines around that, and roles and responsibilities, who should be doing what, and we were before the improvement, before the template was created, there was a lot of rework and back and forth around the scope of work. The project manager would submit it to the contract specialist, and they you need this, and it would go back. I mean, there were weeks spent on just refining the scope of work, and and they could be pages and pages and pages of documentation. Mm-hmm. And so we streamlined that, and we're running about an average of around 11 pages on a scope of work, and reduced the rework immensely.
How much, I'm sorry, was the original?
About 36 pages.
36 pages, okay. Mm-hmm. From 36 pages to 11.
Yeah. And then the evaluation criteria, we had this criteria that was broken down into these minuscule measurements and number scoring and percentages, and it was complex. It was on a spreadsheet, and it was just so complex, and I think it had 22 kind of categories, and then each of those categories had measurements within it, and we simplified it, and we have 6 scoring criteria. And it's based on a word score, and the evaluators are given the proposals prior to an evaluation meeting. They read those proposals, rank them with a word score. They come in a meeting where they come to the scoring. They create a single document from that meeting. It took our evaluation phase from an average of 6 to 8 weeks down to 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. And again, guidelines, roles and responsibilities, transparency to who should be doing what in the process, procurement schedule, where high-level milestones and dates associated with it, so that we can track actual to target. Mm-hmm. And so just, again, all we're really trying to do is create transparency to the process as we can. Okay. So this is a great infographic that we created for our piloting the new process in our planning phase. And so it just walks you through very easily, simple steps. And our vision is that on our website, we'll be able to click on any one of these numbers, and it will bring you the tools that you need associated with that phase.
That step.
Yes, step in the process.
Nice.
So that's our vision for this. So very simple for people to understand, and so this is out on our web page now, and people can see this, knowing where we're going. Again, trying to create that transparency around the process and where they are at any point in time and what they can expect. So again, in the evaluation phase, we simplified our criteria from 22 to 6, clarified the roles and responsibilities, clear instructions on the rating system. We had timelines established. And before this, people did not want to be on these evaluation panels. It was painful. We were asking people to do it on the bus, to do it on their own time, and do these elaborate scoring on these 22 line items, and then they would submit it to the contract specialist, and then it would go back because we wanted to make sure the wording was just right, because those are public documents, right? And so it was a lot of back and forth, and now we document it in the meeting, and it's all done in one meeting.
And now people want to be at the meetings?
People want to be on it.
That's great.
We were in one the other day, and somebody said, "Hey, I need a panel member," and the other, "I'll be on your panel." Awesome, right?
Right, yeah.
As
opposed to crickets.
Yeah, no, yeah.
It's painful and people don't want to participate.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. And in the proposal evaluation meeting itself, we're word scoring or consensus scoring, or creating the evaluation note workbook. And again, this creates a document that then can go to the proposing consultants, and it tells them exactly how they were rated, right? And it's a one-page, easily read document, and it has, we've been able to do some work around the debriefs, and also it has decreased the number of times we've had to go to interview. So, which is great.
Wonderful.
So again, just another infographic, simple way that we can, demonstrate what's supposed to happen in this process. Again, the vision is that we'll be able to click on these boxes, and they'll have the tools there accessible to people for people to use. And then in the negotiation phase, this is the longest phase, the longest phase within this long value stream. There's a lot of moving pieces in there. You have the consultants are involved now, because we're negotiating the details of the contract itself, level of effort, people, disciplines, all that kind of. It's a very complex process, but we created a negotiation schedule that is both project-specific and work order, that has the task, what the deliverable of the task is, how long we think that task should take, who's responsible for doing that task, and then we have built-in scheduling that you can put your start date and your actual date, so that we can see where we're on target or off target, so that we can identify more improvement. We also created a CAM template for both project-specific and work orders. We created a cost-price overview document, because cost-price is a very complex process as well, and for the project managers to communicate that information to the consultants sometimes isn't easy, so we wanted a really clear, concise tool for that. We created LOE instructions. We created email templates, the construction authorization memo, the rate sheets. We did a lot of things in this process to hopefully eliminate and again, create transparency. Where are we in the negotiation phase, and whose plate is it sitting on, and what deliverable, and where are we? And it's transparent to the consultants, to the project managers, and to the contract specialists, so they can all see it and all take action when needed. Again, just a nice little infographic that hopefully we'll be able to, again, click on the boxes and have the tools right there at our fingertips.
Yes, that makes it looks very simple.
Every step of it, yeah.
Sure, it's not that simple.
Right, because you think back to the large process map that we had, just laying these three infographics next to each other, not so intimidating.
Yes.
9,000 stickies on a piece of paper.
Different colors.
A little different. So this is before we started some measurements before we started our improvement. Our planning phase was taking 18 days. Our solicitation phase was taking 31 days. Evaluation 36, and negotiation 83 days, and then contract execution was 3 days. So a total lead time in 2015 for 171 days. And during that time frame, we processed 12 contracts.
And it was based on the workload.
Yes, based on the workload.
Okay.
Yep. And so then, as we move into 2016 measurements, we reduced our planning from 18 to 13 days. Solicitation went down to 22 days. Evaluation 27 days. Negotiation 76 days, and then contract execution 3 days, for a total lead time of 151 days. So we removed 21 days.
21 days. Awesome.
Average. But the other great thing, along with all this process improvement work that we're doing with this team, we processed 6 more contracts in this time frame, right? So it had a couple folds, right? We built capacity, we were able to process more contracts, and we also shortened the lead time.
Wonderful. And you finally hit the 50% improvement, right? From 300 days overall to 151 days, which was the original target a few years ago.
Yes.
Great.
Yeah. Which is, the team feels much more aligned to now, because we actually can see that we can meet the target.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a, and they know they can blow that out of the water going forward.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
Yeah. So the next steps, we have implementation of the new planning checklist going into production here pretty quickly. We're also piloting the new planning email notification, which is basically sets them up, tells them everything that they need to do throughout the procurement process, and it again, we just want to create transparency around what the expectations are. We have a sponsored meeting coming up where the team will report out on these successes, and then we're going to celebrate.
I think celebration is in order.
Yeah, and then training and rolling out of the new process. So,
well, that is definitely an accomplishment. I mean, it's a very long process, and it's a process that really affects a lot of people in King County. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes.
Every agency, if they want to buy something, they have to come through procurement.
Mm-hmm. So I'm sure that your customers within King County are pretty happy with this too.
Yes. Yes, right. Very much so.
Well, thank you for doing your project presentation webinar. We always like to hear success stories about it, and our listeners are always tuning in for great examples of project presentations, especially in government. That is definitely one of the places that people are always looking for ways or good success stories in it. So if you have any more questions, you can contact us at contact@golean6sigma.com. We have free tools, templates, and infographics, and more. I do have a couple of questions for you that I just wanted to ask you before we closed this session. So what was your favorite part about the project? I mean, so it was a long project. You were working on it for what? How long did you guys do your process improvement?
Over a year.
Over a year. So what was maybe either the turning point for you or your favorite thing about the project?
I think for me was at the beginning of the project some of those aha moments when the team was discovering that they had the same pain points, and the fact that right off the bat, we were able to eliminate a form that had 4 signatures on it just by having a conversation.
Wow.
And so, I think also the relationships that have been built between the contract specialists and the project managers through this process, they have a great working relationship now. They pick up the phone and they're talking to each other all the time, and we're getting inserted into the process way earlier than we were before, which has prevented a ton of rework downstream, right? Mm-hmm. And it's that conversation, that relationship building that I think I've enjoyed the most.
Oh, that's great. And the other question I have is, so this is a very successful project in government. My hope is, think about how many counties do procurement. And really, hopefully there's a lot of learnings and people can really hear your presentation. So I'm really excited about it because it really has applicability in a lot of places, even in private sector. Mm-hmm. So do you have any advice for people that are getting started in process improvement? Any suggestions or sage advice that you want to share?
Be patient and big ears, little mouth.
Yeah.
Really going with the humility, and again, we put people in bad processes. It's not bad people. It's and so going in with that frame of mind, I think is probably the best how you can walk into a situation, is knowing that this is a bad process. Great people, bad process.
People that are working hard, people that care, stuck in a process that is going to bottleneck.
Yeah, people want to do good work. We just haven't given them the tools to do good work.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Thank you for that. So thank you, Kara, for sharing your success story. I really enjoyed hearing about it. I'm sure our listeners did too. I want to thank our listeners for tuning in as well. And this is really where the rubber meets the road. So hopefully you can tune in to the next project presentation webinar that we have. Thanks for joining us for this presentation. And so goodbye until next time.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.